the PowerPoint slides that are in the newspapers and whatnot. The PowerPoint slides are public or published. Journalists tend to prefer those to like dry policy documents because they're visual. They tell a story very briefly. But the actual facts of how this works are, it's Google for the world's telecommunications traffic. That's both internet and phones and anything else that they can find a new vector into, which means I can find out everywhere you've been on the basis of your device's movement. What other devices you, such as what other phones stayed at the same places you stayed overnight. I can tell when you're sleeping with. I can derive what your pattern of life, when you wake up, when you go to bed, when you go to work, how you get there, your routines and methods of travel, whether or not you speed based on how fast your phone travels. The amount of power is extraordinary, and this is just talking about metadata, right? I can tell what books. Because Amazon, when you're browsing around and selecting books and so on and so forth, that's unencrypted, right? I don't even need to compel Amazon to assist me in doing that because it's traveling electronically naked over there. Whoever has their hands on these levers of power is presiding over kind of turnkey tyranny. And we have to remember that policy is the weakest restraint on power that we have. We've got the Constitution, we've got statutes, and even those get violated. Policy is constantly in flux, and it's often changed secretly without our knowledge. If the only thing that's protecting us from somebody turning this key is our faith that the policies are in place and have not changed, we're in a position of vulnerability.
Yeah, and I think that the only answer that we have really is transparency, which we don't have. And the only way we can get it right now is whistleblowers. So thank you. I wanted to ask you guys to talk to this audience here for a moment. People who are involved in representing communities and issues that are not always popular to the establishment, as it were, who could be, or as Malky would put it, already are targets of surveillance. What do they need to do on a practical level to protect themselves? And let me first do a little show of hands here. How many of you use encryption in your email? I got more chuckles than I got hands, I should point out. I got about 5 or 6 hands and about a dozen chuckles. So Malkia, tell us a little bit about sort of what advice you'd give this group here first.
Well, I think Ed probably knows a ton more about what individuals can do to protect themselves than I do. So I can share what I think as a society can do. I think that we need to update computer policy for that so that it actually protects the First and Fourth Amendment in the digital age. I think that that's the primary, first and foremost thing that we need to do. I think the second big thing that we need journalists like you, Dan, to tell the story from the perspective of those whose voices are generally left out. We need to not start the clock on surveillance with 2013. We need to start that clock much longer ago than that. I think that we need to affirmatively protect the right to record of civilians and not only affirm the right to record of the police. I think that, I think the last thing I'll say is this, and the biggest thing that I think we need to do is I think we need to grow racial justice movements that actually fight for these First and Fourth Amendment rights as part of the movement itself, right? So that we don't just fight for fundamental rights like food and shelter and what's basic to humanity, but recognizing that this fight around First and Fourth Amendment rights is central to the fight for racial justice, and that fight actually requires new remedies new leaders, and new resources.
Yeah, amen. And I think basically whether it's racial justice or social justice, criminal justice, any of the other justice issues, economic justice that you guys are involved in, if we don't have the First and Fourth Amendments protecting us, protecting your communications, the battle is much harder to win.
That's right.
If at all. Ed, one of the huge people say, well, what has Ed Snowden accomplished? And one thing for sure that you've accomplished is raise the popularity of encryption and the notion that we need to take steps individually to protect ourselves, and that the extraordinary activism on the part of technology companies not known for their activism by building these new things. Obviously, I'll just give you a chance to put a pitch in for making sure every one of these people encrypts their emails going forward.
This is a complex space, and if we had the rest of the week, we could talk about this with a little bit more nuance. But when we try to compress it, the intelligence community has a $75 billion a year budget when you count military intelligence programs. That's more than we spend on things like national science foundation, so on and so forth. Despite the fact that terrorists claim fewer lives than bathtub falls or police officers in our country. And when we think about, these accesses and these pushes that are occurring for more and more powers, this is actually not just a policy question, this is a political question. The question is, what kind of world do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a society where no American can pick the phone without worrying about who's listening? Do they have to worry about what their Google searches are going to look like to some government official, 15 years down the road, 25 years down the road, when you can't even remember what you searched in that box last week? When people say, I don't have anything to hide, yes, there are political answers to this, like saying, arguing that you don't care about others' privacy because you have nothing to hide is no different than saying you don't care about freedom of speech because you have nothing to say. But that misses another point of the fact that there's actually vulnerability in there. Surveillance isn't about safety, surveillance is about power. That's right? When we look at Section 215, that Patriot Act program, the first one that was revealed by the courts on the basis of the archive program, that the courts found unconstitutional, Congress eventually changed with legislation. It was operating for more than a decade in the most indiscriminate way. They collected everyone's records, and yet they said it never stopped a single imminent terrorist attack in the United States. It never even made a concrete difference in a single terrorist investigation. These are their words, not mine, right? And this is a board that included, like, the deputy director of the CIA, not exactly flaming liberals here. So we've got this balance where the government's asking you to create a society in which there can never occur a conversation to which the government is not party, which is a radical change in the nature of human society that's never existed before. We always had privacy within the walls of our homes. Communications were ephemeral. You go to confessional church, nobody hears it, there's no record. Even when you wrote a letter, there was no long-term record of that unless you were already under investigation. Someone was basically doing some kind of pen register to do that. Now, all mail being sent to the U.S. Postal Service is scanned to detect fraud and things like that. I'm sorry. And when we think about this, if I had all of your records for just the last 30 days, and at the end of those days, I accuse you of a crime that you did not commit, do you think you could defend yourself? I know everything you did and you don't. Right. Now, how do we defend that? How do we stop that? How do we prevent that? Trying to fight on one of these two liberties is where I argue here in the audience, use GPG, encrypt your calls, encrypt your texts, which, by the way, if you want to do this the easy way for your smartphones, just use Signal. It's an app in any Windows store you can get it. I use it. It's pretty solid. It's not unbeatable, but it's very strong. And of course, it's real. This is like saying, constitutional rights should be transmitted via word of mouth. That's not how it should work in a free society. We have to change things on a policy level. We have to change things on a political level. We have to use the technical community to enforce our rights through new technical means in ways that are reliable, that are robust, that actually work at scale. So rather than you having to take some action, it happens without your knowledge. Now, we do have some evidence today of methods that do work. The Apple versus the FBI case is a good example of this. The FBI would not be as pissed off as they are if it was not effective. Now, there is a caveat. The FBI expert in court that Apple has the exclusive technical means, these are the words in their court documents, exclusive technical means of getting at this phone. Respectfully, that's horseshit.
We need to wrap things up.
There are hardware attacks that have existed since the 90s that the FBI can mount unilaterally, but I'll do it.
I like respectfully, that's bullshit. I think that's very appropriate. We need to wrap things up. I want to ask you one last question. Add 30 seconds. The Intercept is about to run a big story about the fact that this year's topic for the National High School debate topic, the policy debate, is resolved. The United States federal government should substantially curtail its domestic surveillance. Tens of thousands of students, honest to God, kids at high schools all over the country are debating this issue this year, this spring. Ed, 30 seconds. What's your message to them?
I'm encouraged and amazed that we have this happening on this kind of broad level. It's important because people have to have a chance early on to think about what they care about, what the domain of their rights should really be, where the boundaries should be drawn, and to draw them themselves. Right? Our rights are inherent to us as individuals, as a society. They're inherent to our nature, not granted by governments, merely guaranteed by governments. And when we talk about encryption, right, and they say, oh, this, that, or the other, they're missing the point. It's not really about encryption. Encryption is a means to an end. Encryption is a method of enforcing rights to which you're already entitled. The real question here is, do you have a right to have a conversation only with yourself? Do you have a space to develop your own ideas before you're comfortable sharing them with the world? Do you have the right to enjoy the fruits of your own intellect in the privacy of your home, your community, and your associates without it having been intercepted, analyzed, and fundamentally, in basic sense, prejudged by others who are not entitled to?
All right. Thank you both so much. It's been a real honor for me to talk to you. Thank you. I'm going to hang up on you guys now. Didn't think I'd ever hang up on that stuff. Anyway, all right. Thank you. So you're taking over.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody.
I'll do it.
Jenny's next.
All right. I will remind you what is next. Thank you so much, Dan, and for that very
Thank you.
interesting I'll give you a couple minutes to check your phones and make sure you're. Anyway, wow, really, really interesting and important conversation.